गुड मॉर्निंग एवरीवन। इंडिया वॉच में आपका स्वागत है। चलिए स्टार्ट करते हैं आज के हिंदू ओपेड एनालिसिस के लिए। लेट्स स्टार्ट विद द फर्स्ट एडिटोरियल। सीरियस एलिगेशंस, इंडिया एंड कनाडा स्टेयर एट अ डाउन टर्न इन टाइज आफ्टर ट्रूडोज चार्जेस। तो अभी हाल ही में द रेसिप्रोकल एक्सपेल्शन ऑफ सीनियर डिप्लोमेट्स बिटवीन इंडिया एंड जो कनाडा है वो इट इज कमिंग टू द फोर. It is marking a new low in India Canada relations, and countries like US are showing deep concern. And जो charges क्या है अपना, Canada is accusing India of violating its sovereignty and violating the international law as well. And India is accusing Canada of promoting anti-India activities. So this is spiraling out of control. And the person in question here जिसके इर्द गिर्द ये कंट्रोवर्सी हो रही है, इट्स द डेथ ऑफ हरदीप सिंह निज्जर. कनाडा इज accusing of Indian intelligence agencies of behind his murder. एंड जो निज्जर है, ही इज अक्यूज्ड ऑफ एंगेजिंग इन टेररिस्ट एक्टिविटीज इन पंजाब इन 1990s. एंड उसको इंटरपोल का रेड कॉर्नर अलर्ट भी जो है इशू हुआ है. And he is a Canadian citizen. So the editorial is asking कि it can be difficult for both countries if things go really out of control. एंड इसमें पैरेलल विद पाकिस्तान बनाया गया है विद रिस्पेक्ट टू इंडिया, दैट इट्स ओके, लाइक जो प्रेजेंट पास ऑफ सिचुएशन है विद पाकिस्तान accusing each other or spewing venom against each other has become routine. But in the case of Canada, things are different. First and foremost, because it is a NATO partner, and the second is that India has a sizable Indian diaspora in Canada, and it can make things uncomfortable for them if things go out of control. And also, जो the free trade agreement was in talks between India and Canada, so that is derailed as of now. So the next editorial is the Asian giant. India used the Cricket Asia Cup as a preparatory platform for the World Cup. So I guess you can skip this article. And let's come to the lead article written by Sohasini Haidar. She is a Hindu's correspondent on foreign relations. So you can follow her articles. These are quite insightful. The title says The Mantras That Powered Success at the G20 Summit. So we will look at this article briefly. इसमें the author is saying that mantras for success of G20 and India's presidency has been behind revival of multilateralism, the multipolarity, and the middle way politics of India. First, we'll see the desire for multilateralism. So, इसमें international experts they were saying that multilateralism is on decline or it's on its deathbed. So the author is saying that these declarations might be premature. तो यहाँ पे जो वेस्टर्न ब्लॉक है उसको कमेंट किया जा रहा है इस आर्टिकल में कि दे मेड लार्जर पार्ट ऑफ कंसेशन ऑन द लैंग्वेज ऑन द यूक्रेन एंड द प्रिजर्वेशन ऑफ G20 बीइंग देयर प्रायोरिटी. बिकॉज जो G20 है, G20 इज गेनिंग सेलियंस बिकॉज इट्स द ओनली ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, ठीक है, इन विच इंक्लूड्स वेस्टर्न ब्लॉक, रशिया चाइना कंबाइंड एंड ग्रुप ऑफ नॉन अलाइंड जो कंट्रीज हैं. World leaders were conscious of this aspect कि अगर if there was no joint statement, the sustainability or survivability of G20 will come into question. And if there was no joint statement, the group would have broken into two blocks, Western and the BRICS country. And this would have been due to because, it would have shattered the consensus. जो G20 को बनने का जो consensus है वो शटर हो जाता बिकॉज हार्ड नेगोशिएशंस की कोशिश हो रही थी, इंडिया बहुत जोर लगा रहा था. एंड इफ यहाँ पे जॉइंट स्टेटमेंट ना आती सो इट वुड हैव फर्दर जो अभी कुछ जो पावर्स हैं कुछ फोर्सेस हैं विच आर ट्राइंग टू एस्टेब्लिश बाइपोलैरिटी ऑफ द कोल्ड वॉर एरा दैट वुड हैव वन ओवर मल्टीलेटरलिज्म. So it is a win for multilateralism in that sense. And also you have to look G20 in a broader context now. G20 came into being as a forum for इकोनॉमिक गवर्नेंस, ग्लोबल इकोनॉमिक गवर्नेंस. जो चाइना भी अभी बोल रहा है कि वी डिडंट पार्टिसिपेट और वी डिडंट सेंड आवर प्रेसिडेंट हियर प्रिसाइजली कि भाई इट इज नाउ लाइक गोइंग बियॉन्ड इट्स समिट ऑफ इकोनॉमिक गवर्नेंस. बट as we are seeing, G20 is emerging as a forum for geopolitics as well. because even though G20 secured a consensus on leader statement, United Nations Security Council, which is the highest seat of geopolitics of the like world, has not been able to forge even a single resolution which is not vetoed after the Ukraine war. So whether China likes it or not, G20 is going to enter into the field of geopolitics. And this article discusses about the efforts of the Troika Plus, which includes the countries from the global south like Indonesia, India, South Africa, and Brazil. And these four countries are going to have the successive presidencies of G20, and this is the first time the baton has been passed to the countries of the global south in terms of the G20 presidency. So the concerns of global south are coming to fore here, and global south would be the biggest loser if the old rivalries of Cold War era are revived, because these situations like impinge on or retards the development, and global south ज़्यादा receiving end पे रहेगा because it needs that sustained momentum of development. The stake in multilateralism जो है, जो global south का इसमें सबसे ज़्यादा है, and this pushes us to the next aspect of that support for multipolar order. तो यहाँ पे क्या है कि that US after post कोल्ड वॉर यूएस वाज पिचिंग फॉर यूनिपोलर वर्ल्ड, काफी टाइम तक यूनिपोलर वर्ल्ड रहा भी है, बट after Trump presidency and the black backsliding of the Trump era politics from, for example, like various United Nations organizations and जो पेरिस अकॉर्ड था उससे भी पुल आउट कर लिया था. It has given a body blow to unipolarity of world under American stewardship. But also we इसने वो चीज भी दिया था that we do need America in the leadership positions, precisely the effects of the Trump era backsliding. So there won't be a unipolar world, but we want American leadership on the global level. And then there is China is favoring for the bipolar world, because it sees itself as the only contender who can challenge US hegemony, and it doesn't want any other player to come to that standing. And this has been made possible due to 19 it's a spectacular economic progress in from 1990s to 2010s, and it's a belt and road initiative of a trillion dollar infrastructure development initiative, uh, with onboarding of 90 countries, and it has extended considerable influence of China in these countries. However, the goodwill is depleting due to its actions during COVID-19. It's a very irresponsible behavior per se, and the predatory financing to the smaller states, which is impinging on their sovereignty. Like Pakistan can be a good example as well. It's like a vassal state of China now, and the aggression towards its neighbors in the South China Sea, like Philippines, Vietnam, and with India on the land borders. तो जो सारा टॉक ऑफ पीसफुल राइज ऑफ चाइना के भाई चाइना खुद राइज करना चाहता है किसी और के राइज में, इट वोंट बी अ स्टम्बलिंग ब्लॉक इन अदर नेशंस राइज. तो वो जो है जो वो स्टेटमेंट है वो क्वेश्चन अभी हो रही है. तो देन there is जो global commentators हैं, now they are agreeing that there is emerging of third pole here, third pole in global south, and the voice of global south is ach- uh, achieving greater and greater salience, and India is leading that voice, and issues of development, climate change, health, and digital divide, which is core of the global south issue, they are finding a greater voice, especially in this year's G20 meeting, in which agenda was set around these four broad goals only. For example, multilateral development banks with regard to development, climate change में the questions of historic responsibility, the loss and damage principles are reiterated and reaffirmed, and questions on health and digital divide. So, like the global south also has taken multilateralism, and the world being multipolar, because global south itself is emerging as the third pole. So India secured success of G20 and its presidency through raising stakes. It went all guns blazing in that regard. So it is apparent through its agenda setting. in its agenda setting, it brought the priorities of global south to the fore, and no major power bloc or power can afford to alienate grouping of 125 countries. This grouping of 125 countries, and also though the shared concern, the forces within the nations who share concern of multilateralism, उसको बूस्ट मिला है, और जो हॉक्स हैं जो बाइपोलर वर्ल्ड की तरफ लेके जा रहे थे, वो लाइक इट्स अ डिफीट टू देम. तो दैट हैज बीन लाइक ग्रेट contributors to the success of G20. The third aspect है the middle way. So the Swasini Haidar is discussing that India's politics of like not aligning with any warring sections or trying to maintain its principal neutrality is paying dividends now. पहले इंडिया इस चीज के ऊपर क्रिटिसाइज किया जाता था कि like okay India, like India's decision is no decision at all, it's indecision. But India's policy of strategic autonomy abhi it's gaining currency. Wider other countries are also emulating it, France for example. So India's position यहाँ पे as a neutral player who is in talking terms with with the both sides of the divide, तो वो भी काफी इसमें मतलब important रहा है to drive this consensus, and it is paying dividends that India's policy of non-alignment or strategic autonomy, or like middle way, is now paying dividends, and it has been a contributor in not letting world slide into the bipolarity of the Cold War era. Let's move to the next article. It's the Kaveri Water Management Authority should act. So it's a like reoccurring theme कि जब भी there is a distress, जब भी monsoon deficit आता है, तभी like कावेरी वाटर मैनेजमेंट अथॉरिटी की जरूरत पड़ती है. एंड जो डिस्ट्रेस शेयरिंग फॉर्मूला है उस पे अभी लाइक देयर इज अ थोड़ी वो है, विवाद है उसके ऊपर, तो हमेशा वो फोर पे आ जाता है. तो you can read, it's your choice, like but I won't recommend you go into to the details of this article. बस इसमें आप ये चीज देख लीजिए कि that Kaveri Water Board Management Authority, it's a like example of cooperative federalism, and I guess it's comes under Article 263 of Constitution, जहाँ पे these mechanisms are written, and and the cooperative federalism is inherent in our Constitution, and is the role of Supreme Court as a original uh, jurisdiction between like deciding on the matters of federalism. तो लेट्स आगे चलते हैं. फैसिलिटेटिंग डिग्रीज विद इन अ डिग्री, लाइक यू कैन स्किप इट. एंड दिस नाउ द क्वेश्चन ऑफ simultaneous polls, two states have a say. तो अभी इसमें वो अलग बात है कि अच्छा वन नेशन वन इलेक्शन जो एक उसकी डिजायरेबिलिटी अलग बात है. बट दिस आर्टिकल इज एग्जामिनिंग के ओके इफ वी हैव टू गो टुवर्ड्स वन नेशन वन पोल, तो व्हाट सॉर्ट ऑफ अमेंडमेंट्स वुड बी नीडेड. कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल अमेंडमेंट चाहिए रहेगी कि नहीं चाहिए रहेगी, एंड इफ so if the constitutional amendments is needed, would the ratification of states would be needed in it, because जो ratification of states है जो requirement है, that makes the constitutional amendment to come about very difficult. तो इसमें मोटा क्या डिस्कस हो रहा है, लाइक कि लॉ मिनिस्ट्री हैज आउटलाइंड 7 टर्म्स ऑफ रेफरेंस फॉर द पैनल, जो अभी फॉर्मर प्रेसिडेंट रामनाथ कोविंद के अंडर किया गया है. वन ऑफ द टर्म्स ऑफ रेफरेंस है टू लुक इनटू द इफ constitutional amendments are required. So this article then dwells into what sorts of constitutional amendments are there in constitution. So to refresh your memory, you can go through it. Let's see. So this article talks about that there are three procedures of three categories of constitutional amendments. The first category of constitutional amendment is by simple majority, like any ordinary bill ये pass हो सकती है. And the instances of this are like under Article 4, which governs the organization of states, in which any new state can be created, or the boundaries of existing states can be altered. And then under Article 169, the creation or abolition of legislative assemblies, नहीं sorry, councils. and and then the para 21 subsection 213 of schedule 6 areas. जो schedule 6 areas of tribal areas है, वहां पे जो amendment है, that will come under the simple majority वाला जो चीज. एंड देयर इज अ सेकंड कैटेगरी ऑफ अमेंडमेंट्स जो है स्पेशल मेजोरिटी है, जिसमें 2/3 मेजोरिटी ऑफ द मेजोरिटी चाहिए, 2/3 मेजोरिटी चाहिए ऑफ प्रेजेंट एंड वोटिंग, एंड मेजोरिटी ऑफ द टोटल मेंबरशिप ऑफ बोथ द हाउसेस चाहिए। और जो लोकसभा रूल्स हैं दैट प्रिस्क्राइब दैट दिस प्रोसीजर हैज टू बी अडॉप्टेड एट द ऑल स्टेजेस ऑफ द बिल, एट द इंट्रोडक्शन ऑफ द बिल, एट लाइक adopting the amendments prescribed by select committees of the or the parliamentary committees, and then while adopting the amendment, you have to all these जो प्रोसीजर है वो हर प्रोविजन को पास करते टाइम फॉलो होएगा। एंड देन द थर्ड कैटेगरी इज दैट जो ये वाला along with the procedure of the second category, the ratification by half of the states would be required, and जो ratification होती है ये simple majority से होती है, so these are called entrenched provisions of the constitutions, and these relate to the rigid aspect of our constitution which are tough to amend, and these are listed under the article 368 subsection 2, and this pertain to the federal structure of constitution. तो यहाँ पे अपना इवन डॉक्टर बी आर अम्बेडकर was in favor of making altering the federal structure to be very difficult, और ये rigid aspect of our constitution में आ जाता है। तो कौन-कौन से एस्पेक्ट्स हैं जो लिस्ट किए गए हैं अंडर आर्टिकल 368 सबसेक्शन 2? इट इज द इलेक्शंस ऑफ अमेंडमेंट्स टू द इलेक्शंस टू द पोस्ट ऑफ प्रेसिडेंट अंडर आर्टिकल 54 एंड 55, and amendments to the extent of the judicial power of union and states under article 73 and 160. Amendments to the union judiciary or state high courts, articles from 127 24 to 147, 214 to 231, and amendments to the distribution of legislative and administrative power between union and states, article 245 to 255. Any changes to the to any list under schedule 7, जहाँ पे state list, centers list and concurrent list आती है, and any changes to the representation of states in the parliament under article 82, and amendment of the amending procedure itself under article 368. So then the article discusses were there any provisions that were struck down as unconstitutional for the want of ratification by states. तो यहाँ पे दो एग्जांपल्स यहाँ पे डिस्कस किए हैं। एक तो है किहोटो होलोहन वर्सेस जकीलू 1992 केस, जो एंटी डिफेक्शन फेमसली एंटी डिफेक्शन केस कहा जाता है। उसमें जो पैरा 7 था, पैरा 7 में जो है, जो एंटी डिफेक्शन प्रोसीडिंग्स में द कोर्ट्स वर बार्ड कि उनकी ज्यूरिसडिक्शन नहीं है। तो इस केस में बोला गया कि जो ये प्रोविजन था इसको रेटिफिकेशन चाहिए थी, लाइक फ्रॉम द स्टेट्स। तो दिस प्रोविजन वाज दिस पैरा वाज स्ट्रक डाउन, एंड द अदर एग्जांपल इज द यूनियन ऑफ इंडिया वर्सेस राजेंद्र नाथ शाह, जिसमें लाइक कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनैलिटी ऑफ पार्ट 9B व्हिच इज रिगार्डिंग कोऑपरेटिव सोसाइटी डिसाइड किया था, व्हिच इज अ स्टेट सब्जेक्ट। तो दिस वाज आल्सो स्ट्रक डाउन। ओनली पोर्शन के जो कोऑपरेटिव सोसाइटी व्हिच आर स्पैनिंग मल्टीपल स्टेट्स, सिर्फ उसको रिटेन कर लिया गया था अकॉर्डिंग टू द डॉक्ट्रिन ऑफ सिविरेबिलिटी। यू कैन गूगल इट, दिस इज इंपॉर्टेंट, डॉक्ट्रिन ऑफ सिविरेबिलिटी। तो इसमें व्हाट आर द ओपिनियंस रिगार्डिंग कि क्या-क्या अमेंडमेंट्स चाहिए टू मेक वन इलेक्शन वन नेशन वन इलेक्शन अ रियलिटी। तो 2018 में जो लॉ कमीशन था लेड बाय बीएस चौहान, it opined that simultaneous elections are not feasible within existing framework of constitution. The amendments that are required are in constitution, representation of people act of 1951, रूल्स ऑफ प्रोसीजर ऑफ लोकसभा एंड असेंबली। तो इन सभी चीजों में जो है अमेंडमेंट करनी पड़ेगी, और इन्होंने ओपिनियन दिया था कि जो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल अमेंडमेंट होएगी दैट वुड बिलोंग टू द थर्ड कैटेगरी, जिसमें रेटिफिकेशन ऑफ स्टेट्स चाहिए रहेगा। Second opinion, which is discussed in this article, is of PDT Achari, who is the former Secretary General of Lok Sabha. According to him, to make one nation, one election a possibility, all existing state assemblies will have to be dissolved, and So this can be possible only in two circumstances: when the legislature itself recommends to the governor to dissolve the assembly, or the second is if like president rule is declared in the states. तो जो सेकंड केस है उसमें सभी असेंबलीज में इट कैन नॉट बी डन कि साइमल्टेनियसली सभी असेंबलीज में प्रेसिडेंट रूल आ जाए। एंड जो फर्स्ट केस है जो है दैट वुड बी ओनली feasible if states resign voluntarily but opposition parties जो है वो obviously they won't resign voluntarily, but otherwise constitutional amendment will need to be affected. तो constitutional amendment कहाँ पे affect की जाएगी कि जो अंडर आर्टिकल 172 है, जहाँ पे लाइफ ऑफ असेंबली है, इट हैज बीन स्टिपुलेटेड कि अगर डिसॉल्व नहीं होती असेंबली तो 5 ईयर जो है वो लाइफ रहेगी। And this amendment impinges on the federal structure, therefore ratification of states will be needed. तो बेसिकली इस आर्टिकल में यही डिस्कस किया गया ऑफ feasibility of constitutional feasibility of one nation one election, which apparently will be very difficult to achieve. That's it for today. I hope today's session was helpful to you, and keep logging on to India Watch. Thank you.